So, John, I think it's fine to start anytime. Welcome, Quakers, to the coffee house. And we're so grateful that John Cook is going to be sharing with us today. We invite you to come next month to see Jim Morris and Margie Beckhoff, and the month after that to see Rua and Lewis. So, looking forward to a great spring. John, thank you. You can take it away.
All right. Okay. Well, we're going to be sharing and talking about the African diaspora religions, or some of them, and music and singing and drumming is a big part of the African diaspora religion. And so I want to start this with a song, and I'm going to play my drums and sing this song. This is a song that I learned from a Nigerian man back in the early 1980s. I took his class, a drumming class, and it's a song about Ori, O-R-I. Ori is your head. It's the crown chakra. It's the top of your head, and there's a physical head and a spiritual head, and the Ori is your connection to God, to basically the divine, and that's true in a number of different spiritual journeys. So this is a song about Ori, and we'll see how it goes. I asked Joda what the words meant to that song, and he said it's a prayer that your head gets home at the same time that your feet get home, or that your feet get home at the same time that your head gets home. And I interpreted that literally, and I've come to understand that it means much more than just those words. And later he said something like, it's also a prayer for children. And honestly, I never did fully understand what he meant, but that's what he said. And I've learned that the Ori is an integral part, an integral connection between a person and the divine. And it's like your crown chakra. So that's the Ori. And I'm going to be talking primarily about Yoruba religion, which based and comes out of Nigeria primarily. But before we do that, I wanted to just have a brief discussion with you about African diaspora. And I sent an academic article out. I don't know if any of you've had time to read it. But I sent it because sometimes there's misinterpretation about what African diaspora is and means. And I learned from that article that it's a much larger process than I had understood. I had understood it to be simply the Atlantic slave trade and the displacement of people through the Atlantic slave trade. But the scholar who wrote the article that I sent points out that there have been many African diasporas beginning many hundreds of thousands of years ago. The first humans came out of Africa and were migrated throughout much of the world. And that's the ancient diaspora. And then there was a lot of movement of African people in the early centuries after, well, the centuries which we refer to as AD. And they had to do with slave trades, largely with Islamic countries, but then some additional slave trade with Europe. And then what we generally think of as the African diaspora is the Great Middle Passage or the Atlantic Ocean slave trade, which involved somewhere around 15 million Africans being transported from the west coast of Africa to North and South America and the Caribbean. And I'm going to share my screen just for a minute. I have a map that shows the magnitude of that movement. Okay. I hope you can see this. Basically, this is covering the Atlantic slave trade from 1650 to 1860, and it shows the numbers of people who were moved from the west coast of Africa to South America, North America, the Caribbean. And over in the left side, there's a little index that shows the primary reason for those slaves being moved, being sold, to work in growing tobacco, coffee, cotton, sugar, also in mining and growing rice. It turns out that a large number of the slaves actually went into South America, largely Brazil. And Anna, I saw that you just came on a bit ago. And if you have anything, Anna's from Brazil, from Sao Paulo, right? And she may have something to contribute in that regard. But basically, I just wanted you to see the flows of people and where they went. And then I wanted to just think about what this means. How was it, how is it that people were treated as a commodity? That they were taken against their will, and they were moved places they had no idea about under very brutal conditions. How is it that one set of humans would come to view another set of humans as having no value other than as a commodity? What does that mean? And have we really escaped that? I think there are arguments that could be made that we haven't, because there's a large number of people in the United States and elsewhere that are being treated as though they're expendable, that their lives don't matter. They don't have to be paid living wages. They don't have to be given homes or assured of a home. They don't have to be assured of food. in the United States, this is true. And there are many, many millions of people, some 40 million or more people in the United States who are descendants from these slaves. What does that mean? How are we to relate to that as Quakers, but also just as white people? I want us to think about that. And also, I just want to show you very briefly how this happened, if I can figure out how to scroll. This is how it happened. This is the interior plan of a slave ship. And the slaves were packed in just as tight as they could get them. And there was a lot of illness, a lot of dysentery. There were no accommodations for elimination or sanitation at all. And there are estimated 3 to 5 million of the slaves who were brought in the Atlantic crossing died en route, including some who just jumped overboard. So this is part of how it happened. But I think it's worth thinking about this. And for me it's a part of how I'm trying to understand how to deal with being a recovering racist. This is a part of what that means. But a wondrous part of it is that the African people who were displaced, who were forcibly removed from their homes and brought to North America, South America, the Caribbean, through just unbelievably hard, hellish circumstances. They held on very tightly to their culture, to their beliefs. Now, I want to say that I'm a scientist, and I am aware that there are requirements for being able to say that I know something. And those requirements are very different from what is required to say I believe something. You can believe whatever you want, and most people do, in fact. Our spiritual journeys are primarily about beliefs. And they are beliefs that we develop and nurture as we grow. We imagine them, we enact them, and we learn them from our friends and neighbors and brothers and sisters and our other people in our cultures. Our spiritual journeys then have to do with what we know, but they are not just what we know. They're what we believe. And those beliefs vary a lot. And I've been really impressed with the extent to which the African, the Yoruba religions have a lot in common with Quaker beliefs and other kinds of Christian beliefs. So the diaspora, when we talk about the African diaspora and the African diaspora religions, we're talking about spiritual journeys and spiritual belief systems that were preserved by the African slaves as they were forcibly brought from Africa to places that they didn't know and under really, really bad circumstances. But they held on to, many of them held on to their culture their beliefs. And the Yoruba people who came out of the area that's now largely Nigeria, they held on very tightly to their spiritual beliefs, their beliefs about God, who they refer to as Olodumare, and about the prophet, or an entity that's very similar to, in spirit, very similar to what we know as Jesus. Olumira is this person, this entity's name. And then there is a whole large group of entities that are referred to as Orisha. The Orisha are like, they're kind of angelic beings. And they are connected to us, and they're connected to nature. And there is one of the Orisha who is a messenger to the other Orisha. And this Orisha holds, he's a reservoir for life force that the other Orisha have, and that we have. And this Orisha is referred to as Elegwa, or Elegba. And this is Elegba, or this is a representation of Elegba, or Elegwa. And when you do a ceremony, when you do a worship in the Yoruba religion, you always recognize and honor Elegwa first. And you ask Elegwa to take your entreaties, to take your thoughts and your prayers and your music, your songs, your dances to the other Orisha. So I want to salute Elegwa. And unfortunately, I don't know any Elegwa songs, but I hope that will suffice. How many of you were able to watch the Vermont Interfaith Power and Light film, the film they showed about Yemanja? I think I saw Annie on there. What did you think about that?
Oh, I'm on. I loved it. I was deeply moved. I felt as if, in some way, even though I'm here, I was with them in that film. It was so very personal and spiritual that I felt that as if I were present with them. And it's something I'd like to explore more of.
I know exactly what you mean. If you've seen the film is about candomblé, which is a version of the Yoruba diaspora religion that emerged in Bahia, Brazil. And the candomblé is worshipped in they're like homes or houses. They're called terreiros. And they are really places that the community gathers to worship. And they are overseen, and the ceremonies are overseen by a person, an elder. And in this film, the unique thing about this film and the candomblé community in this film is it was run entirely by women. And one of the woman who was head of this terreiro was 108 years old. And she was in the film. And she was very lively and very sprightly. It was really moving to see this. But this terreiro, their their Orisha, the Orisha that they focused on, that they worshiped, was Yemanja. And Yemaya or Yemoya is the goddess of the sea, the mother of the sea, of all water, actually. I'm going to show you a representation of Yemanja. This is a representation, physical representation of Yemaya. She's called the Diosa del Mar, the goddess of the sea, the mother of all life in the sea and the oceans, all the fish and all life in the ocean. And as such, she is connected very, very, very tightly, very firmly with nature. And in a sense, as you know, the ocean is what sustains us. It sustains life on the planet in many, many ways. And we are putting it at dire threat. We're polluting it horribly. There are dead zones, huge dead zones in the ocean now. You know this, I don't have to tell you this. It's heavily polluted with plastic. And I mean mountains of plastic. And it's our life. It's what we live from. It's what gives us life. And it's what Mother Yemaya represents. Mother Yemaya is also known for being very fierce, very strong. And I'll show you another representation of that. I don't know if you can see her. She's very, very fierce looking. As a mermaid. And I think for me, at a point in my life, very early, I developed a very strong affinity for the ocean. I grew up in South Alabama on the Panhandle, about 2 hours away from the Panhandle coast, and we spent a lot of time on that coastline when I was a child. Just beautiful white sand and clear water. It was wonderful. And the last time I was there in recent years, a lot of the beach that I played on as a child is full of high-rise condominiums now. But it's still a beautiful place, and the ocean is still beautiful and life-supporting and full of life, and it's what protects us and keeps us alive and feeds us in more ways than we can imagine. And the Candomblé community that was in the film, I think they get it. I think those women get it, because they were doing their best to protect Yemaya and the oceans. And I think it would be well for us to reflect on how we could do that, how we could do better at that, and how we could honor Mother Yemaya. And one way I want to do that now is to sing a Yemaya song. And this is a song that I actually first heard Paul Winter Consort play back in the 1970s, and then later I heard the song performed by what we knew as Sergio Mendes in Brazil '66. That group was very different in Brazil than the recordings that we heard, and they did a recording of a bembe, a complete worship service for Candomblé, and they also performed this song. Um, it's a very simple song, but I found it really moving the first time I heard it, and later, Molly and I were in graduate school at Colorado State University. We became friends with the Latin American Student Association, and we joined a group of Latin American students in a music group. It was led by a Brazilian man who was a wonderful musician, and we performed a lot of Brazilian music, including this song a couple of times. So this is a song for Yemaya. So for Mother Yemaya. So what did you make of this? What is this? How does this seem to you? How does this feel to you? That there is an entity called the goddess of the ocean that is worshipped by people in Africa and all over Latin America, and in fact, a lot in North America and the U.S. What does it mean? You know, we talk about this term intersectionality. Is that an intersectionality? Seems like it to me. There was a process that occurred among the slaves called syncretism, and it was a process wherein they modified their spiritual journeys, their spiritual beliefs, and merged them to some extent with Catholic beliefs and other Christian beliefs. And on one hand, it was a way of preserving their spiritual process, their spiritual journeys, their beliefs, their culture, because particularly in North America, they were prohibited from engaging in any kind of activities that appeared to be worshiping their cultural deities. They were forbidden to drum, to sing, to dance, all of which are heavily involved in their worship. And so they began to merge their entities in their belief systems with Catholic saints, for example. And this representation of Yemaya, it could be Mother Mary. And I have another larger one that if I put it in my front yard with a bathtub behind it, Catholics would think, oh yeah, that's Mary, but it's Yemaya. And they did this with a number of other entities. It was a way that they could preserve their systems, their spiritual journeys, their culture, and not have them completely annihilated. There was a process that the slaves who were brought into North America went through called seasoning. And seasoning was basically, it was a system of torture that was intended to separate the slave completely from their historical culture, their belief systems, their practices. It was essentially an effort to make them just a source of labor, just a worker, nothing else. And that seasoning attempted to do away with their beliefs and their culture. And for some, it succeeded, but not all, thank goodness. A lot of the beliefs that emerged among Black people in Louisiana, particularly around New Orleans, some that are referred to as voodoo. Voodoo is a bastardization of Vodun. Vodun is the version of this Yoruba religion, this diaspora religion that emerged primarily in Haiti, and it's still there. It's still being practiced, and it was a strong influence in the area of New Orleans. There, as I said, there are a lot of kind of new versions of practice of these religions in the U.S. and all over the world. A lot in South America, particularly Brazil, Candomblé, Macumba, Mbandu, and others. And in Cuba, there was a very strong presence. It's called Santeria in Cuba. And it's still very strong in Cuba. Little Africa, Cuba was called Little Africa. Santeria is also practiced in Central America and in Mexico. There was spillover of slaves from Texas into Mexico, runaway slaves. And these practices have been carried into Mexico as well. So Yemaya is one of the Orisha, and there are a lot of Orisha. There may be, I don't know, 25, 30 or more that I've heard of. But there are 7 primary ones, and they actually have been corresponded to the 7 chakras. The Ori is the crown chakra. Olodumare is the 3rd eye. Olunmira is the third eye. Obatala is the throat chakra. Ogun is the heart chakra. Oshun is the kind of navel area. Yemaya is in the reproductive area. Yemaya is heavily involved in reproduction, both of humans, but also every other species. And then the last chakra is Shango, the Orisha of thunder and fire. And he's a warrior, very fierce energy. But there are many others, and they all represent elements of nature. They're all each connected with nature in a particular way. And in some, they define nature. They are nature. And they are us. At some point in my spiritual journey, I realized that that God is all there is. There is nothing else. And so I think there's spirit and life in rocks, in trees, and streams. And Molly probably will remember that Holmes Ralston, who was an environmental philosopher at Colorado State, he said to me one day after we were talking about, this was a class in environmental philosophy, and we were talking about what is life, how should it be valued, and I told him that I thought there was life in everything, and he looked at me and he said, "You are a pantheistic animist." And I thought, okay, that's all right with me, if that's what I am. But yes, I think there's life in everything. And I think that we are not doing a great job of protecting that life through our exploitation of the environment. And I think we need, you know this, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. We need to do better, and we're trying to do better. And we have help. We have help from Mother Yemaya, and from the other Orisha, and from God, and from all of the entities that we know in our spiritual journey, because they're trying to do it too. I'm talking a lot, and I feel like I need someone else to say something. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Dr. Cook. Thank you for
I'm
all
glad to
this
see you.
Brazilian explanation. It's so nice to hear all those things that I experienced as a child, and I know, I've never been involved with candomblé, but it's part of my culture. So I know about, Iemanjá. I know, we celebrate Iemanjá on the 2nd of February, February 2nd. We go to the ocean, we throw flowers, we jump waves. So we kind of like do a celebration, put candles on the seashore. Oshun, the god of fire and war, and like the fighting within yourself. And as you were saying, like these entities, they were, in order not for the African American, or Latin American, African, Latin, I don't even know how to say that, but like the African Brazilians, not to lose their culture, they had parallels with the Christian, divinities. So they also call, you know, some divinities, like they have the same figure for both of them. Like Oshun is represented by, forgot the name right now, but will come to my mind soon. So yeah, very very nice. I love that.
Thank
And I
you.
feel like those you know, our ancestrals were very in tuned what the very core of our needs were meant to be worshipped, you know, like the ocean, the fire, the you know, like the chakras, where it gives us force and what is important. And I think we evolved as a human, as humanity, but we lost this touch with our essence, right? And that's why like people don't care about throwing garbage on streets that will, you know, go into the drains and end up in the ocean. So very sad.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah. The Orisha are nature. They are nature, and they are part of our world, and they are part of us. Whether we know about them or not, whether we can name them, whether we see them, whether we are aware of them, they're part of us. So I think it's good to think about them. I was thinking about something I wanted to say, and it escaped me, but I think it had to do with what we as Quakers think of about the African diaspora. You know, there are more Quakers in Kenya than there are in the U.S. At least I've heard that. I assume it's true. What does that mean?
One of the things that's been striking me as you've been talking, John, about these parallels between different spiritual journeys. We were in Greece during Lent and Easter one year, and there's a tradition where they take the statues out of the church just on Good Friday, and everybody goes down to the ocean, and everything goes into the ocean and comes back. So, but there's no, you know, that question about why are there more Quakers in Africa than there are here, and we're always so quiet in our meeting. I mean, you know, for somebody to do drumming ministry during meeting or would be, I don't believe that it's ever happened. Or, you know, sometimes people sing or chant, but so I do feel that there are some really striking parallels, and and the idea of pantheism is also that that everything is holy, not just us and our human bodies. And I would love to hear, if you don't mind, you do one or two more songs before we run out of time, if that would be okay with you.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
John, can you show us the drums?
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't do this in a way that you could see them. This is the bass drum. It's an LP, Latin percussion, conga. And this is the treble. It's a smaller version of the other one. And I wish I could be, you know, so that you can see them, but I couldn't figure out a way to do that with my little laptop computer. Molly and I heard a women's chorus several years ago do this song. It's a tribute to Yemaya, a song for Yemaya. And try as I might, I could not remember the name of that group. Maybe someone will remind me, but it was They had an album out around 2000, and this song was on it. And it's just a very simple Yemaya song.
John, I just want to, well, first, thank you so much for this. It's beautiful. And just to remember that what you're doing is the roots of spirituality, and that those roots are our roots as well, even if very distant, and that somehow we have migrated to much of our spirituality in our head instead of in our body. And what I'm hearing from you is very much this spirituality that's in the body and rooted to the earth. And I so appreciate that. And you're a reminder that we can do that too. We don't have to do it in our head. We can be silent and still be deep in our bodies and send our roots down in the earth. So thank you.
Thank you, Rua. I couldn't have said that myself. I appreciate you saying that. Yes, absolutely. So I think we're getting close to time, and there were another song that there's one more Yemaya song I'd like to do, and it's part of a bembe that I heard from a Cuban ballet folklorico performance. And it's also, there was a, down at the intersection of Mass Ave and Washington Street in the south end of Boston, when I started working at Boston Medical Center, there was a Botanica right on the, almost on the corner of Washington Street and Mass Ave. And this Botanica had, I mean, a Botanica is a place where people who do this kind of spiritual journey go for supplies and books and all kinds of things. And this book I found there, this book is titled The Handbook of Yoruba Religious Concepts. And it's written by an American, a Black African American, who went to Nigeria and was initiated and became a Babalawo, a priest in the Yoruba religion. And he set up a center in New Jersey. And this book has fascinating information in it. And I got this book at that Botanica. It was a wonderful place. And I really, really was sad when the South End gentrified to the point where the Botanica had to leave. It was so sad to me. I loved it. But so it goes. I want to do one more Yemaya song, and then if there's time left, one little tiny Yoruba song that's probably you all know. But this song is translated in this book as meaning Yemaya is the gush of the spring. The gush of the spring is Yemaya. The mother of the children of fishes is the owner of rivers. That's how this Babalawo translated it. Yemaya sesu, asesu Yemaya. Yemaya sesu, asesu Yemaya. Yemaya lodo, alodo Yemaya. Yemaya lodo, alodo Yemaya. Yemaya sesu, asesu Yemaya. Yemaya sesu, asesu Yemaya. Yemaya lodo, alodo Yemaya. Barado, ado Yemaya. Barado, ado oromi. Barado, ado Yemaya. Barado,
Thank you.
And I think we're about out of time. So
Maybe we could close with the song that you were going to share with us that maybe some of us know.
yeah, this song, it's very simple, and the lyrics go like this: Ishe Oluwa Kole Bajeo. Ishe Oluwa Kole Bajeo. Kole Bajeo. Kole Bajeo. Ishe Oluwa Kole Bajeo. Do you know that song?
I know
I
this
don't-
song because Issei Barnwell has taught this song, and her birthday's on Sunday. She would love to be honored.
The words translate to God's work or God's creation will never be ended. God's work cannot be destroyed. And it's in the language, the Yoruba language, but I find it really beautiful and moving. So I'll close with that song. Thank you all very, very much. I want to tell you one more little vignette. For about 7 years, up until last March, when the COVID pandemic hit, Friends Meeting at Cambridge has an annual retreat at a retreat center in Alfred, Maine. It's an old Shaker center. And when the Shakers died out, they passed it on to a Catholic order out of Canada, the Brothers of Religious Instruction. And now the brothers are all dying out. There's a little cemetery there that has like two cemeteries. On one side are the Shakers and on the other side are the brothers. And they're both filling up. But at these retreats, I would take my drum collection and do drumming circles with the Cambridge friends. And we had so much fun. And we did a lot of these songs then at those drumming circles. And now there's an African-American man who has how should I say, been adopted by the Friends meeting at Cambridge. And he actually performed and taught a workshop at a yearly meeting, the last yearly meeting that was physically at Castleton. He uses a different kind of drum. He uses djembes primarily, but he has brought drumming into that meeting. They have drumming. Well, before the pandemic, they were having regular drumming sessions and making drums and really enjoying it. So thank you all very much for sharing this with me. It means a lot.
Thank you so much, John. We just are so appreciative, and we're hoping that when COVID is over, maybe you'll share a drumming circle with us somewhere in person.
Oh, I hope so.
Okay.
I really hope so.
Thank you all
Okay.
for coming.
Bye, friends.